This is the first of a couple videos that go over the plotting lectures from week 2. I'm going to assume here that you've actually looked at the PDF for the lectures for week 2 and that you've tried some of the problems and now you're just going to look at the scripts to see what the answers are. So remember that the basic equation we're looking at is the standard equation that says if I put this much money into the bank and I've got this rate of return and I keep it in the bank for so long, how much money do I make? So the only really tricky thing about this equation is that R and T have to have the same duration. So if the rate is 4% per month, then T's got to be values in months. So standard thing here, we set up the amount that we want, our variables. So we have the principal amount that we put in. We're going to use $10,000. We're going to assume a rate of 4% per year. You notice it's percent, so it's 0.04. And then we ask how long do I want to invest it. Let's say it's 5 years. So T is 5 years. We just calculate the amount here. Amount is equal to the principal times this amount. So if we run this, we get out that if I invest $10,000 at a rate of 4% for 5 years, I would have $12,000 by the time I finished. All right. So that's the basic equation we're going to work with. So the first question I want to ask is, can I see how much I'm going to earn per year and then plot that? So it's the same equation. So again, we're starting with $10,000, 4% rates, but this time, instead of T being a single value, we're going to have T go from 0 to 5. So remember, this says make a variable T and fill it with an array that goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I calculate this equation, I actually get 6 values out instead of just 1. So if I run this, I'm going to run this in the debugger so that I can see what the values of variables are. So here's T, 0 through 5. Because this is an array, when I calculate A, I actually get values back for each value of T. Now you'll notice I didn't do any dot times here. That's because this is the only variable that's an array. So you technically don't need them. It wouldn't hurt. You could put dot times in here and it would all work just fine. So the whole reason we made a couple arrays is so that we can plot them. Now the only tricky part about a plot is that the number of elements here and the number of elements here has to match. So what does that look like? It looks like this. So I printed with a blue line with X markers, and I went from 0 to 5, and my values came out 10,000 to 12,000. You notice the 10 times 4. So this plot is not very useful as it is, so we add in some labels and some titles. So label, label, title, these are just strings. Pretty straightforward. And now we have a title, we have X labels and Y labels. Remember to always put in your units here. All right, so the next part of this is to ask the question, well, what would happen if I did the rate in months instead of in years? So we're going to make another T variable, but this time we're going to go from 0 to 5 again, but in months. All right, so this T in months looks pretty similar to the T we had before, only you'll notice this times 12. That's because I want to do 5 years, but I want to do it in increments of 12 months. So when I do this, calculate T, calculate A, you'll notice that T now has 61 numbers in it, so that's one for every month of the year from 0 to 5 years. And same thing, the amounts that I make are also same size array. So now let's go ahead and plot this on top of the previous plot. This is a little bit of a trick. So the T in months here means that if I plotted this times this on the top of the same plot, I'd be plotting this one in months and this one in years, which isn't going to work. So what I need to do is convert this to be years. So that's simple enough. I just undo this times 12. So now I've got a variable that goes from 0 to 5 years in month increments, but in a unit of years, not months, and then I plot those two values. So there we go. Here's our original plot. So this is taking interest every 5 years. This is what happens if you take interest every single month. You'll notice you make a lot more money. One thing still missing from this plot, which is that we want to be able to tell which color is which. Legend is something that you call after all of your plots. Every single plot that you call, you have a string here that says what to label that by. So here's our first plot, we call it yearly. Here's our second plot, we call it monthly. And that gives us our legend up here. So a couple other things. When we're plotting two things in a window, you see this hold on. This tells MATLAB not to overwrite the previous plot. If you don't have this in here, then it will just plot this and erase this one. So that's it. There's our comparison of how much money you would make for if you invest every year, and here's how much money you would make if you invest every month.